would have been rather lovely, and doing a presentation about sheep. So they asked if I would do a video just so that there was something happening in the meantime. And it's lovely for all of us to be out there contributing in some way, because, so many restaurants, well, all restaurants are closed, and some are doing takeaways, and it's just so lovely to see each other and support each other. So there's quite a few of us that have been doing video clips for various clients and just out there sharing some of our experiences. And I must say, from the number of views, people seem to be really enjoying seeing a little bit of inspiration for what to do in the kitchen, and some live cooking and some tips. So it's great that we have the opportunities with the internet to do these things. It's not a substitute, but it is good fun.
It is. It does create opportunity where perhaps 10 years ago there wasn't any. So yes, I agree that we're in a far better situation than we could have been. Charlotte, coming back to you again, Wendy and her amazing bunch of chefs. I don't know, what do you call a collective of chefs? It's not a bunch, it must be something. But her amazing bunch of chefs, bunch of friends, put on these fantastic demonstrations in the cookery theatre, and then the competitions are showcasing the very best of the best. And Charlotte, what do you think that benchmark means from a consumer perspective? The fact that the show is really demonstrating the creme de la creme.
Ultimately, it's always to do with awareness. For the average person, they'll go to the same shops every day, maybe the same cafes, maybe even a couple of restaurants that are their favourites. When they go to somewhere like the Highland Show, suddenly their perspective is broadened massively. They suddenly get to see, oh wow, there's a lot more out there than I thought there was. So they're getting a lot of inspiration, a much greater sense of the quality of ingredients they could source themselves, the kinds of recipes they could try themselves at home. And it's a very positive, uplifting thing to see such high quality in the food world.
If we were to let's take cheese for an example. Wendy, do you think that the very fact that there is a cheese competition, which is extremely prestigious, the very fact that there are also really top quality cheese producers in the food hall, do you think that makes the rest of the cheese industry, people who are not involved at the Highland Show, certainly yet, do you think that brings their standard up and gives them something to aim for, and almost makes them pull their socks up and think about what they're trying to do?
I think so, yes, I do. But I think even more, there's inevitably always in any country, there'll be a sort of average food producers that don't think they need to up it. They have their place in the regime. But what I think the Highland Show does is we'll pull some up by the bootstraps and we'll inspire ones that actually think, hang on, my sheep are pedigree. I could do box schemes. Why don't I do that? Or I could supply that local farmers market. Shall I get myself organised? Maybe I should get a website. And I think I come across people that are incredibly inspired. They actually, maybe within their small community, didn't quite realise that actually I'm doing something quite special here. It's given them a recognition and an inspiring them. And also it's fantastic to see the young farmers and the next generation being inspired by the ones that they see as mentors and the ones that they look up to, that are doing something with their produce, with their particular lamb or with their particular smokery or whatever it happens to be. And often the older ones are very generously spirited with that as well. And they share because they're so enthusiastic about their produce. So it's very inspiring.
100%. I would agree with that. I think it is about inspiring people to do the best that they can. But there's another thing that's really important about shows like the Highland Show. It's not just about everyone raising their standards to one kind of unanimous, singular definition. It's also about cross-pollination. When you get a lot of people together in a space like that, all presenting their ideas, presenting their product, presenting their journey, presenting their story, it's inevitable that in that moment, there are also going to be an exchange of stories, an exchange of experiences, which makes producers go, oh, wow, I never thought about it like that. Or a producer might see an emerging trend amongst other cheese producers or other ice cream producers, whatever it is, and think, you know what, I don't want to go in that direction. I want to go in my own direction. I want to do something totally different. So it's not about everybody aspiring to or reaching the same standard. It's about creating more dynamic diversity in the food industry. And I think that in and of itself is raising the standard.
Yes, absolutely. So it's kind of a melting pot where you've got inspiration, but you've also got innovation and collaboration. And if you throw all that in together and mix it around, the sky is the limit.
Yeah, because actually, ultimately, it's unhelpful to think of it. I know that there are lots of competitions at the Highland Show, but it's unhelpful to think of our food system and food culture as a competition. It's not competitive. There has to be a diversity. In cheese making, for example, Wendy knows this so well, there is no best cheese. The best thing about cheese is that there are lots of different kinds, and we want each of those to express itself in the way that it can best, right? When you go to judge a competition, like I did the bread competition, I did a beer and cider competition a few years ago as well, it's really hard to choose the best one, because they're all wonderful in their own right. And I think that's something that you get from going to a show like the Highland Shows, because you see such a great diversity, so many different products, and they're all wonderful. Like you say, it's not about achieving a pinnacle, it's about expressing the diversity.
I'm very much a silver linings person. And can you think of any other silver linings that we might be seeing within the food and drink industry as a result of COVID?
I think aside from the fact that more people are looking for local suppliers of their food, there are a lot of people who want to now grow their own. And that does a few different things. One, it makes people realise how hard it is to grow food. And that's actually really important because, we tend not to know how farming works or, where our food comes from. Having that first-hand experience of trying to grow your own carrot and then having it eaten by rabbits and then, carrot fly, it makes you go, oh, wow, this is actually really quite tough. Not only that, it also requires a lot of water, a lot of my time, a lot of knowledge. It requires my soil to be good. And holy moly, there are people out there who know how to do all these things, who are doing it really effectively. If anything comes out of this, I really hope that more people will, one, appreciate what producers do, the work they go through to produce our food. But secondly, they'll be prepared to pay a little more for well-grown local food. Yeah, I think that could be a major silver lining.
Definitely, and probably not one that's the most obvious necessarily. So I'm really glad you mentioned it, because I think it's hugely relevant, hugely important. I know I have suffered at the hands of hares. They massacred my entire vegetable population a couple of years ago, and I learnt my lesson. And also, but myself being married to a farmer, he would probably kiss you if he heard you saying what you've just said, because it's a rewarding lifestyle, but it's a tough job to grow food. I think the more we can get people to understand how it's done and the challenges, the better it will all be, and the more people will embrace local and artisan and quality product if they understand what goes into it. Absolutely.
Just to add to that as well, I know that there's been a massive craze across the UK to turn towards baking your own bread. That's another thing, that when you try and do it yourself, you realise that anyone can bake a loaf of bread, absolutely, but to bake a really good loaf of bread, you need some expertise. Bread is one of those things that in the UK we've got so used to paying nothing for a loaf of bread, but actually it really does take time and good flour, and you don't know that and you don't fully understand it until you've made your own loaf.
And if you have got a taste for your local lamb or beef or your local cheese, you can never go back to the mass-produced stuff again.
That's very true. That's very true. Thank you. This has been really enjoyable, interesting, educational, this conversation. I really appreciate both of you joining me, Wendy and Charlotte, for giving us your time. And thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely a pleasure, and really lovely to have a chat about that incredible event with you both.
Thank you also to Steve Mitchell at the Buffalo Farm. Thank you for listening and being with us for another On Farm episode. We look forward to seeing you next time. We're going to finish up now with a second round of these fantastic producers we heard from at the start of the episode. David from Equi's Ice Cream, Stuart from Hood's Honey, Jill Witherman from Ava Berries, and Valentina from Alanda's Seafood and Ice Cream.
It does feel that there's something missing. Within a day of winning it last year, we had all the videos up on big screens in our own gelateria, and it was shots of the trophy, and I was over-celebrating apparently when we picked the trophy up this year.
A huge amount of effort goes into it. I can't even explain really. It's actually funny because we joke about it, like, amongst ourselves. We're like, if we told people, like, what we actually do in order to set all this up and make it happen, they would just be like, you're mad. So yeah, huge amount of prep work goes into making it all, because everything's fresh. Even like our lobster rolls, like, we like buy whole lobsters, we like de-shell them, chop them up, and then we make like our own dressing that goes through that. So yeah.
We're still producing fruit, the best quality fruit, but we have had to rethink, in terms of marketing, our entire marketing plans for the summer. We're actually running an alternative Wimbledon event where over 2,500 lucky Scottish homes shall receive a punnet of our Ava Berries. So that's our alternative experiential activity, whereas we would normally have the Royal Highland Show.
Yeah, when you run a small family business, you don't get any choice. You kind of sit back. And our whole driving force, of course, is the bees. We have to just keep going constantly. The diversification's worked fantastically well. At weekends, if they're East Lothian people, they go and get their birthday presents delivered by us by hand on the day of their birthday. And some days here in East Lothian, we've delivered a 21st, a 40th, a 50th and a 90th in the same day. And that brings some joy to people who are struggling, who are suffering. But also it gives us a bit of a kick as well, that we can do a small amount to help. Stuff
like the Edinburgh Festival, we had all sorts of things lined up for that this year, but I think that's all gone. And we're also moving to a new production unit at the moment in Rutherglen. We're in the midst of doing that, so we picked the worst time to be moving factory. But I put things in perspective. My daughter is a doctor. She phones me all the time, and it just, when you hear the things that she has to work through, the fact people's health is the most important thing.